This is our inaugural live cast in Europe. We are going to be hearing from marketing leaders from Anheuser-Busch, Kraft Heinz, Electronic Arts, and Merlin Entertainment. Please be sure to ask questions and use the chat to engage with both our speakers and attendees. Before we kick off, I would love to share a quick recap of what Brand Innovators has been up to over the past 10 months.
Every single person on our team, from the top down, from the bottom up, everybody stepped up.
You've been with us since the beginnings. We're going to keep the ball rolling. We have two more amazing speakers.
We were going to launch our very first virtual event, which we called the Livecasts. Historically, Brand Innovators has been a real-world events-based organization. We would go around the country, every major market, hosted by major brands, Fortune 500 companies. We would bring our community members together in the real world at those events to share with each other and learn from one another. It became obvious in March, like many other brands, we had to rethink our entire model.
We're really excited to kick this off and to welcome Angela.
Joining as our moderator, Alex Belady.
I'm really happy to be here with Steve Kennedy today.
They've continued the momentum all the way through this time that we've all been, unfortunately, stuck inside during the pandemic.
It feels like a family, it feels like a community.
Just got married 2 days ago.
Congratulations.
It's been an honor to be part of the virtual stage.
Thanks so much to Brand Innovators for having me here today.
Learning from them and being part of a community was really great. So thank you, Brand Innovators.
We've had 112 live casts, 150 private virtual roundtables. Between those two, 1,200 senior brand marketers from all sorts of amazing brands in our community, and all the amazing brand marketers, all of our fantastic partners and sponsors.
I found the experience exciting, thoughtful, inspirational.
I look forward to when we're back in person, but until then, this has worked very well.
If you haven't attended, you should, and you should bring your team with you.
No, I'm going to be a marketer for the rest of my life.
It's great, Chris. I love it, bro.
Full creative power, and they're like, you know what, you know best, you do you.
How is working from home going for you?
It's probably driving my wife crazy.
Fantastic job moderating. This is really wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vishal. That was great. So welcome, everybody. We're really excited about today. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to our MC for today. Lisa Humphries is the Strategy Development Director at WPP in the UK and the Chief Transformation Officer and Integration Officer at Group M. Please join me in welcoming Lisa, who will be MCing today. Hi, Lisa. Welcome.
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for you and your team for including me in this inaugural international session.
We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you. As someone who has the word transformation in their job title, I'm thrilled and excited that we're going to spend this afternoon talking about marketing innovation, a subject that's incredibly close to my heart. We have a packed agenda of brilliant speakers, so without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speakers of the day. I would like to welcome Julie Yufei, the GM and Head of Global Markets Europe for Anheuser-Busch InBev, and Dries Martens, the Managing Director of Draftline at Anheuser-Busch InBev, to our virtual stage. And this session will be moderated by Rick Jones. Rick is President of Western and Southern Europe for Adform. Welcome to the stage, Julie, Dries, and I'll hand over to you, Rick.
Thank you very much. Really good to be here. I'm very excited because I know how good the people that are going to be talking to you are, what great stories they have to tell. So before we crack on, let me just briefly introduce myself. So I'm Rick Jones. I work for a company called Adform. We are a platform for modern marketers. We run campaigns and manage data across the globe. We have 30 offices around the world, and we compete with the likes of Adobe and Google and Trade Desk. Of course, we just do it that bit better, and we're very, in fact, we're entirely independent. So that's us, Adform. And without further ado, let's meet the panelists today. So we have Julie and we have Dries, and I want to start actually by asking Julie, if that's okay, if you could just tell us a little bit about AB InBev for anyone who doesn't know just how wonderful and impressive this company is, and what's the purpose of AB InBev? What would you say?
Sure. So good morning, everyone in the US. Good afternoon, everyone in Europe. Thank you for having me. I'm Julie Yuffie. As you can hear, I'm not natively European, but I am based in Brussels. And for anyone who doesn't know, AB InBev is the world's greatest brewer. We are, in more than 50 countries worldwide, and we brew beloved brands like Budweiser, which is an image of the St. Louis brewery behind me, Corona, and Stella Artois. And recently, I took over the role as the head of our growth markets in Europe, which is 32 plus markets stretching as far north as the Nordics, down to Greece, Portugal, Cyprus, Central, Eastern Europe, Poland, Austria, Switzerland. So it's a lot of fun. But prior to this, I was the head of marketing for Europe and the Middle East, and very pleased to have had the amazing opportunity to work with Dries and some other great talents in Europe to build Draftline, which is our internal creative powerhouse, as well as lead our initiatives through the COVID pandemic last year. So we're very proud of these, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because I think they are great examples of us bringing our mission to life, which is all about bringing people together for a better world. So I think I answered your question.
I think you did brilliantly. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. So Dries, how about you? If you could just tell us a bit about yourself and your role, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, Rick, and hi, everyone. So yes, actually, Julie asked me about 2 years ago if I could join her team and build and start Draftline, which was then going to be our in-house advertising agency. And so today, we're almost at our second anniversary. We built it, and so we are now having around 50 employees. So we're adding another 15, I think, this year. But we also work with a lot of freelancers, like around 70 freelancers. And we take on, last year, we took on 650 briefs from our teams versus 100 the year before. So we have a very exponential growth. And before Julie asked me, I was already at AB InBev, but I was leading marketing for one of our direct-to-consumer businesses in Europe. If that answers your question as well.
That really does, yeah. Amazing. And we're going to come back to Draftline a bit later, I'm sure, because that's a very, very interesting story. We also, of course, want to talk inevitably today about the last 12 months for you as a business. And, as you said, you are enormous in size. You have some of the world's most iconic brands in terms of beer and brewing. How has the last 12 months been for you? Because I understand you've got quite a lot to tell. There's been a lot going on. Is that right?
We do. And again, we'll go back and forth between us because this was an enormous effort, I would say. As I mentioned earlier, right, our purpose is about bringing people together for a better world. And in the early stages, I would say, of the pandemic, we basically had to pivot, like many others, very, very quickly. And it would not have been possible had we not brought some of the capabilities and talent that Draftline brings into our business in the year before. So we changed basically the plans for more than 40 brands overnight. And that required an immense amount of ownership, I would say, a kind of a roll up your sleeves, if you will, attitude, but more importantly, consumer centricity and proximity. Because in order to change, we really had to have at the fore our consumers, our customers, and our communities in mind. And had we not had that capability in-house, the speed that was needed and the insight probably would not have been as easily accessible to us. So the way we approached this, we had three kind of key missions, right? The first, which was, if you guys can even remember this far back, at the beginning in Europe, there was a lack of supply of PPE. So our first concern was community safety and protection. And we said, okay, what can we do, right? We're about bringing people together in the better world. And so we actually converted alcohol from beer into hand sanitizer and disinfecting liquid, hospital grade that could be distributed across Europe. And I'm very proud to say that in a matter of a week or so, we delivered more than 3 million containers of disinfectant and hand sanitizer to frontline services. We did this in more than 20 countries. We built healthcare facilities. We even donated ad space with our partners. So as you know, we have lots of media. We repurposed all the media with FIFA to deliver messaging in communities. So first front, was protection, and all of the artwork, the messaging, the insight, et cetera, came through the team that Dries leads as well. Then the second wave, which I'm super excited to talk about, was really about how we impact communities. And with that, as many of you know, as pubs closed, as restaurants closed, there's been a tremendous impact to this industry. The industry employs millions of people. When the bars and pubs aren't open, they're not working. They need, money on the table, et cetera. So what we did was with Dries's team I think from start to finish, the first rollout was a week. We basically created a digital platform where consumers could immediately go and support their local pubs, buying a beer. The money would be immediately funneled to the pub. So that provided an immediate impact into the industry. Consumers had received a voucher that they could redeem for beer. We topped it up. And because this was done using the technological prowess of the Draftline team, we were able to roll this out globally into 21 countries and deliver millions and millions of dollars into the industry. And if you guys will indulge us later, I think we have a very short video clip of how this comes to life, which we can show. But immensely proud of our ability to walk the talk and impact communities. And again, none of this would have been possible had we not had a team internally that understood our business, understood the need, had the technical capability to really be able to pivot.
That's so
piece that I think, just one last point, sorry, Rick, is that we were able to, eventually transfer from that kind of fear stage into one where we were really trying to care for our consumers. And as the months wore on, and they're still here, right? And people are stuck at home, we know that consumers' mental well-being was very, very important. And again, using the same team, we were able to address our marketing assets, so to speak, using the classic Budweiser "What's Up" iconic campaign to be able to use this to deliver a message of taking care of your buds, so to speak, and making sure you're looking out for your friends. So again, tremendous effort by this team. Couldn't be prouder, but a lot of it was made possible by the foundations that were laid the year before when we started to build Draftline.
The government ordered.
And this is the video.
The immediate closure of almost all the places we go to for leisure.
Cafes, pubs, bars.
When pub landlords face their worst fears.
We'd like to believe that we come through the other side of this. We really, really, really do.
We stepped up to the challenge to help them. Our idea? Save Pub Life, an initiative designed to help pubs get the money they need. Buy a gift card to use when they reopen, and we'll match it with a donation. So you could support your local pub with double the money. In just 1 week, we created a unique platform from which pubs could join and people could buy gift cards from. And we didn't just offer Save Pub Life to bars that serve our beer. We supported all pubs, giving every landlord the tools to encourage people to buy gift cards for them. Pre-populated social media posts, emails, and videos gave pubs content to instantly reach out. Every week, new executions were created to share advice from top-performing pubs. Save Pub Life soon exploded. 1,500 pubs signed up, 20,000 gift cards sold, £1.2 million donated, and that's just in the UK. Save Pub Life soon spread to 21 countries, bringing in $11.5 million for 24,000 global venues and millions earned in media impressions.
It's been
inspirational for us to see how supportive our customers have been.
This is the difference between keeping the bar open or not. Thank you.
But it wasn't just our presence in trade that grew stronger. Our reputation amongst consumers increased across the board. And unlike some, we showed real leadership in a time of need.
It's extraordinary. I mean, I was genuinely, when I learned about the things that you've done, blown away. It is actually phenomenal. You said to me, you practice your purpose as a brand and as a business, right? And that's one of the fundamentals which allowed you. And we'll come on to how Draftline was the second piece that enabled the agility to do that. But as a brand, you already had those values at heart and could respond. It wasn't a knee-jerk. You responded genuinely from the heart when you did this, right?
It's true. And again, I think the consumer proximity combined with the creativity in the team really is what made this happen. That, and of course, there's an ownership attitude, right? This was happening to all of us. And so you can imagine in a team that has lots of young people, right? Young, energetic people, some of whom are by themselves in their own apartments or with their roommates, right? People they probably didn't opt to spend all that time with in isolation. And, the world is changing around them, to then immediately say, okay, wait, we can help, we can do something and use the platform for good is very inspiring. It makes me so proud of the team and of what we can do. And I hope that that's a lasting thing that we've grown from and learned from through this pandemic, because I think being able to genuinely practice a better purpose in the world is what makes the difference between brands that you love and brands that just are.
And I think as well, Rick, that so when this happened, we didn't have a brief in Draftline, so there was no formal briefing to us like, oh guys, pubs are closed, what can we do? Because we are in the same building, we work together, like we get the same business updates, we see the same, or we get confronted with the same business problems as the marketing team or the supply team or the sales team would see. So automatically the team started thinking about ideas. We had a brainstorm, I remember it very well. And then very quickly we started interacting with other people. So there was no brief. And actually that happens a lot with us, that we don't receive briefs, but we sometimes write them ourselves internal. We say, okay, this is a business problem, this is something, let's start brainstorming around, let's start thinking about it. And the same happens now, with it, we're living in such a unpredictable times. When our pub's going to open again, we don't know. So all of those things, like, they help, and that's what we see often, that we don't get a brief, but that we just proactively come with proposals, and we interact with the marketing teams and with the wider business. Which is an advantage of being in-house.
And what is it about the setup of Draftline that enables you to be just so agile? Because what you make it sound easy, but it's obviously not.
Yeah.
You still work for a big company.
Easy, but it sounds afterwards. I mean, it was obviously a struggle, to get a platform live in a week, align the commercial teams, get the bars on board. It's not easy. But about the setup of Draftline. So we are Draftline Europe. So we are based out of London, and we serve around 40 brands across Europe, from Budweiser, Corona, Stella, but also some local ones such as Jupiler in Belgium, Lef in France, Beck's in Germany, and so on. So in total, it's around 40 brands. For that, we have, as I said, 50 people in the team, and they are there's different departments. So we have a more traditional planning and strategy and consumer understanding team that works closest with the business and with the marketing teams. Then we have a creative team with copywriters, art directors, and so on. And we have a production team with their own studio in the office. So we have our own basic studio to do quick, rapid productions, for which we do digital, out of home, TV. We've done all of them. And then we also have a digital media team. So all of the digital media in Europe is bought through Draftline. So we buy it ourselves. So we have basically media buyers sitting in the team that buy straight from those platforms, which is a great advantage, because I think the whole point is to bring those different departments closer together, so that there's less silos and they can work quicker, and iterate when there's opportunities such as Safe Pub Life, Comrise, they work together. And I think what is good about Draftline as well is that we are craving creative talent, we are craving diverse profiles. And within Draftline, we're creating an environment for them to thrive within our bigger company. So they have different development and learning expectations. They crave sometimes maybe a bit more inspiration, autonomy. So with Draftline, so Julie allowed us to create that space, not only also physical in the office, right? We have our own office that looks a bit different than our other offices. So but yeah, which is a shame. We haven't used it since a long time now, but
it infects the overall organization with creativity, right? And at one point, Alvaro wrote in the notes to the panel. So some of our team members, as far away as Peru, we were able to move these ideas very quickly around the global organization, not just within Europe, because this spirit that Draftline brings, it infects the whole team, right? All the way through the marketing organization, all the way to other parts of the team, whether it's trade marketing, sales, et cetera. So it's a wonderful, it's been a wonderfully fruitful and powerful force within ABI.
So I imagine that a lot of that is based on culture, company culture, right? That you can only achieve that if you have the trust given to you by the leadership of the company that allows you to be creative and make mistakes and be agile and just to get on with it, knowing that you have the trust to do that, right?
Yes, that's very true. To be honest, when we started this, we had very little idea how is to run an agency and how to best get those people on board and to work for our company. But the good thing is that we had full confidence from Julie, from our CMO, from our CEO, even, they're very supportive, and they gave me the autonomy to build it as I would think would be the best way. So, and that autonomy, gives you the flexibility to create something. So
also, it's helping us optimize, right? So I think, now in Drew's team, there's new capabilities that have been brought on board that enable us to rapidly test and learn and execute so we can optimize faster than we've been doing before, which again works out again as an overall benefit to the organization and not something you can easily get when you're going outside. And another point on that, right? It's not like we jettison our agency partners. These are very, very valued partners in our business for a long time and will continue to be. So it's just a matter of giving them the space to be able to do what they do best, right? And big ideas and great executions and inspiration. I mean, they do so much with us, right? And that's not going away, but we've been able to add a whole other muscle set, so to speak, in the organization. And Dries and his team continue to evolve that and develop that and bring new creativity and new examples for us, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's often what people mistakenly say, that this is competition with actually external agencies. It is not. We're adding things. We're investing more in marketing. We're investing more in capabilities in house. So it's not a zero-sum game at all, I think, for us, which is great. And then to Julie's point, it's about as digital becomes more important. Especially Safe Pub Life was digital only. So as that becomes more important, we need to break the silos that we have between those departments, between creative, media, and so on. Because all of us, too often, the creative get given to the media and then it gets executed. And then we look again and 1 month later and we say, oh, well, how did the campaign do, right? And then, surprise, we could have changed this. So that's what we're trying to change within Draftline. So now, when we do a campaign, we test more in advance, so the creators work closely with the digital media team together to test things, to break those silos. And when campaigns are live, not for all campaigns, but we do it more and more, we have daily stand-ups where the media team briefs the creatives and the production team to say, look, we're seeing that this is working, this is not working. And they actually change the creative, adapt it as we go. And the results are just much better. So, and this is something I think is a capability that if we bring it in-house or if we have more control, that's thing. So anyway, it's just an example of of why.
I think it's a fascinating example because as an industry, I think what you just described was always seen as being difficult to achieve, because traditionally you'd have, with all due respect to my creative friends, creatives who didn't want to be told what you've just said, the feedback loop of what is and isn't working. Their notion of creativity is, well, this is my art and this is what I do, and here it is, a beautiful campaign. So, but have you had to, I don't know, hire a different type of creative, or how have you managed to achieve that?
It's a mindset shift. Sorry, of course, because not a lot of people are used to this. I think they're more used to it when you work in D2C or e-com, because you have to But for traditional branding, or it's not given. It's not always happening. But the people that join us, they want something different. They want to have a new challenge, and this is part of the challenge. We have a very big ownership culture in ABI overall, and so we also try to get people in Draftline who have that same mentality and who want to do something new. Have the startup mentality, want to try new things. And so I haven't yet, met a creative in our team that says like, oh no, I don't want to listen to the media guys. Also, they're a colleague, right? They're sitting next to each other. They're one part of Draftline team. So it would be quite rude, I think, if you would listen to someone else's opinion.
Also, I think if you think back to the many examples, right? And I keep coming back to COVID because I think it was a moment of like, we compressed a ton of stuff into a very short period of time, right? Where everything changed and consequently we had to change our entire way of being. But this is a team that asked what was possible, right? So we converted beer into bread, right? And the brand donated tons and tons of bread to food banks and across Belgium, because this was something that we could do to help communities immediately in need when people were out of work. We wouldn't have had to ask that question, and it wouldn't have come through in a normal brief. And that idea came not from within the marketing team, but through a partnership of legal and corporate affairs, the supply and technical teams, the brand teams. We worked with an outside bakery partner that we had relationships with. So, it's a much more organic, it was a function, I think, a little bit of the situation, but that's one of the things I'm most optimistic about in the year to come. I think we learned from this experience the importance of having this much more fluid approach across the functions. And when everyone was working together with a very important goal in mind, we saw the power of what we could do, right? And I think that's something we need to hold fast to when we return, to some more of the old way of living.
Is that also helped by the fact that during the last 12 months, we've all, of course, been forced to be more connected? We're all on Zoom together. You can make those connections a lot faster, right? And they're more intense. So it increases that silo busting that you're talking about, really.
I don't know. I really don't know. But I do know it's been wonderful to be able to foster relationships despite distance, right? And direct conversation and this feeling of, I have a role in this and I have a role to play, despite, the obvious physical separation. But I would be remiss if I didn't say I'm very much looking forward to being able to, of my team and see some folks again in person. It's like I've forgotten, I know everyone from here up, but I forgot what happened, how tall you are.
And I don't you think we've all adapted to this new world, but it has given us new capabilities. We've learned new things that we can then, when it does return to normal, we can bring those to the party as well, right?
Yeah.
Be more creative in that sense.
I'm hoping so. I'm definitely hoping so.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how it is because, as I said, Draftline is so new. So we have been alive longer during COVID or under lockdown than 50% of our people, actually more, have never met in person or never been to the office. So I wouldn't be able to compare it to before. But I'm really looking forward to meet those people in person finally and have a beer, for sure. We have actually we have a rooftop bar, which is a great selling point for getting people in our office as well, which was a great asset and we loved it a lot. But now, obviously, that's something we're missing.
Now you show them a lot of videos of the rooftop and other things that will attract them, right? Yeah. But that idea of crowdsourcing ideas, I might have misheard you, but ideas coming even from the legal department, or I just love that notion that ideas can come from anywhere, right? Or they build from anywhere when you break the barriers down, right? You crowdsource them.
Yeah, we happen to be very lucky. We have a very talented legal and corporate affairs team. Very, very talented. I can't say enough good things about them, but I think it was, again, this combination, this brilliant, chemistry that happened with, all the brains and the creative power and the technical skills coming together that really enabled us to make a big impact.
Very good. So we are approaching time for questions. We haven't had any questions so far, from what I can see. So I would prompt all of you out there to post some now if you can. That would be great. If we don't get any, we can carry on talking, of course, because we like to talk. So how do you see the year ahead? And of course, this is about Europe in many ways, in terms of this group and what we're discussing. And there are lots of uncertainties, particularly in certain countries. But how do you see the year playing out for you guys, especially off the back of what's happened in the last 12 months?
Well, I'll say I'm super optimistic about vaccine rollouts and reopenings of, the very, very valuable hospitality industry. We're seeing some great, countries coming back on, right, opening up again. We're not all the way there yet, but I'm very optimistic. I wouldn't be a marketer if I weren't an optimist, right? So with that, it's very hard to predict. I think we learned that last year. But I'm optimistic that some of the habits, the good habits that were formed during COVID, whether it was deeper conversations because people are, being able to speak in Zoom despite distance, returning to home relationships and cultivating the family. I'm hoping that some of these cooking at home, right, almost a return to a gentler way of living will stick. Because I think they not only work in favor of the categories that we build, but they work in favor of the mission. People are coming together, they're having more meaningful relationships. And, when that happens, there's a lot of great that we can unlock.
So that deepening of relationships is a theme, I think, throughout the whole discussion, isn't it, today? That through your response to what happened with COVID, you deepen relationships with many of the audiences as a business you have, be it your employees or the owners of bars or even the end consumer, right?
We did. And I think lots of organizations did. I think part of one of the nice things that happened is COVID accelerated digital proximity, if you will. It also put everyone in the same mindset, at least in Europe, right? We were all going through this together, and in some cases ahead of different parts of the world. So if we think about how the pandemic struck and it started first in Asia and then moved across, we were kind of the next front. And I think that going through it together, we had to figure out how we were going to live in this type of world. And, that accelerated e-commerce, that accelerated home trends, it accelerated some digital streaming services. I mean, there are many people on this call better able to speak to than myself. But I think as a marketer, that's an amazing opportunity to get to know your consumer, to get to some great personal insights. And I know from the focus groups and things that we did during that time, it was amazing. I got to visit a whole bunch of, I'll use it this way without revealing too much data, a whole lot of living rooms around Europe, all in one day without, ever getting on an airplane. And that was amazing. That was an amazing experience to get to know my consumer and to then be able to serve them with offerings that meet their needs.
What about you, Dries, in terms of this year?
Well, for Draftline, I look forward to continue building our culture by seeing each other physically. Even though I have to be careful, because I read something this weekend that actually the group of people who are most keen to get back to the office are actually the managers. So I need to make sure that my team also wants to come back to the office. I think they do, but I think they also want to keep a bit of flexibility.
So you're not there by yourself, you mean?
Yeah, maybe I'm by myself. Yeah, we'll see. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also, look, beer is, better times are coming, and the place of beer in celebration and that euphoria is going to be big. So for Draftline, that is a great creative opportunity, and also an opportunity to make it, make a difference in people's life. So that is a year I really much look forward to, or a period I'm looking forward to have with my team.
Yeah, the need to come to, at least for us, the need to come together has never been more, important and fundamental. And so I feel there's lots of opportunity for us to walk our purpose and live our purpose in a really impactful way. And we're seeing that from lots of other brands as well, but that makes me very optimistic about not only the future in Europe, but also the future of marketing, because we're going to see some incredible work and innovation in the year to come.
I share your positivity. I'm sure many people do on the call. So we have had a question come in from Diana Dilworth, who asks, as we enter into year 2 of lockdown, what tone should marketers be using to connect to consumers but still offer hope? What would you say?
So I don't think there's one size fits all, but I think what we try and always do is to be authentic and true to our brands. And again, I'll use as an example, right? The way Bud spoke in the UK, at the beginning of the EPL season, was very different from what you saw many other brands do. And it's not a statement of whether other brands were doing things right or wrong, but for us, it was authentic to our tone of voice, right? It brought levity at a moment when it was very badly needed, right? Consumers were in the home, they'd been quarantining, so to speak, for a while. And everyone needed a little bit of mental relief, so to speak. And as a result, I think for us, that's why it performed so well creatively. And it also brought a very, very important message. So I think that, for me, I think it's very important to always be yourself, no matter whether it's a person or a brand. And I think that that's going to be very key for the next 12 months for brands as well.
So we're getting questions thick and fast now. So we have 5 minutes. So I'm going to crack on with them. So first one, Julie, is there a specific brand on your portfolio that saw significant growth ahead of the others, and why?
So it's not one size fits all, unfortunately. I would love to be like, here's an answer. But because the portfolio of markets is so big and the portfolio of brands is so big, it's not the same answer everywhere. That being said, we saw very nice uplift when it comes to the global brand portfolio. And again, I think it's a combination of the need, right? It's fully driven by the need for consumers. These brands are satisfying real consumer needs, and they are well positioned for the needs at the moment, which, is wonderful news for us. And it's a great privilege to get to work on them as well, I have to say.
Good answer. And the next one perhaps is a bit more for you, Julie. So can you describe the delineation between responsibilities between Draftline and your agencies? Good question. How does your agency work with Draftline and vice versa?
Good question. For us, our brands are first. We put our brands first. So we always think like what's best for our brands. That's the first thing, how can we deliver best? And the second question would be, is it either Draftline or is that an external agency? That said, sometimes we work together with other agencies. For example, we don't do anything PR in Draftline. We don't have any intention to, so we work with PR agencies very well together. Sometimes, for example, Budweiser has a lead agency, a global lead agency. We work very well together with them. When it comes to, for example, localizing assets for local markets, or making them more culturally relevant in European markets. Then sometimes if we launch a new brand, for example, a new hard seltzer or something, we would just be the only agency, or it really depends. And honestly, like when we work with agencies together, we do a lot. It goes very smooth. There's not a problem.
One good example, from the early days of Draftline, just to put it in context, we had some great work that we did for the Women's World Cup, the England team, and with Budweiser. And the idea came through some agencies. We produced it entirely through Draftline. And it was like a group effort, so to speak, right? Because every muscle that every team had was brought to the table. And it was like the one who was ideating, the people who were producing, the folks who were amplifying were amplifying. And it worked very nicely and seamlessly. And again, this is early days, so we hadn't quite figured it out yet, but the results are tremendous.
So does it come back a bit to the earlier discussion, the way you collaborate, the culture that you built as a business, and you have partners who can basically live and thrive with that culture, right, in the collaborative fashion? Would that be it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's it. Even for production, right? We produce things in-house with our own designers, and then sometimes we get a production company to work with us. So we're really, like, again, what's best for the brand? What do we think is best? And then we make that choice. It's not, for example, that I have a target or something on, an X amount of projects we have to do or something. That's not at all. Actually, the objectives of Draftline are very much aligned with the North Star objectives of the business as a whole. So yeah.
And again, just going back to the first examples, we wouldn't have been able to make hand sanitizer if it weren't for this whole group of individuals working together. And Draftline branded it, right? I mean, it's not that they were hand sanitizer experts or anything like that, but by virtue of just bringing these different talents together, some greatness was achieved. So,
what a great point to end on. Great summary of the last 40 minutes. So I think Lisa, we're running.
We're at time. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rick, and thank you, Julie and Dries. I thought there were some amazing points made within that session. I love the idea of a performance mindset and bringing that to creativity. I think there's something incredibly powerful in that, and also the idea of practicing your purpose. I'm sure that's something that resonates with lots of people that are joining the session today. So thank you all for your contribution. We're going to move on now to our next fireside chat. I'm thrilled to welcome to our virtual stage Victoria Jardin, the Vice President of Marketing at Kraft Heinz Company. This session will be moderated, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning this, by a fellow MediaCom London alumni, Michael Thomas. Michael is Vice President for the EU of Brand Partnerships at Stream Elements. Welcome to the stage, Victoria, and I'm going to hand over to you, Michael.
Thank you. I'm really pleased you've mentioned that. Actually, it's been a long time since we spoke or indeed worked together. It's lovely to see you doing well. So
please don't say how many years. Please don't say how many years, Michael.
No. I hope Zoom hides that from both of us better than probably our backs do.
I hope so.
But lovely to see you all the same. So yes, thank you for inviting me here to everyone at Brand Innovate. I'm really excited today as I get to speak to Vicky, who has a much better background than I do, unfortunately for me. And so Vicky and I have managed to catch up a couple of times over the last few days. And so we're here to really talk about what innovation in marketing means to obviously Vicky across her career, some insights that I'm really looking forward to her sharing with you, and of course to the business of which she's a part of. But I think first and foremost, let's kind of do a quick introduction. So if I hand the floor to you, Vicky, you can kind of give an introduction to yourself, your role in the business, where you sit, etc. And then, of course, I can do a brief introduction to myself and a quick overview on quickly who Stream Elements are and what we do, because we're new into the market, and I think it might give some insights into why we're on this panel.
Great. So firstly, thank you so much to Brand Innovators for having me. I'm really looking forward, Michael, to our chat. I'm Vicky, Victoria Jardin. I joined Kraft Heinz 3.5 years ago as the VP for marketing for what was our EMEA zone, so Europe, Middle East and Africa. I just moved in January to a new role, so VP of Marketing Excellence across international, which encompasses EMEA, Asia, Latin America, really with a remit there of accelerating our transformation, right? So across media, digital, creativity, insight, amongst other things. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, quickly, I think the beginning of my career was somewhat started at MediaCom, as Lisa inferred. So my background is in the last 15 years, a mixture of buy-side and sell-side roles. Spent the last 10 years focusing primarily on gaming, which over the course of the last year certainly has seen a lot of traction in the marketplace in terms of time spent for obvious reasons. I've recently started at a business called Stream Elements. So Stream Elements is essentially, just a quick overview, is a kind of operating system that is used by streamers to create their content. When they're going live, they use our systems to engage, but also to monetize their audiences. And we tend to see that content across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And so very, very kind of at the cutting edge of streaming technology, which is again probably at the cutting edge of what we're looking at as an industry. So look, let's kind of move quickly into the questions. I'm really excited about this conversation because although we only spoke briefly, there were some really good insights that you were able to give me that I'm sure the audience is looking forward to hearing. So look, we're here to talk marketing innovation. So let's talk some kind of more top line broad brushstrokes. You know, you've had a successful career and you've worked at some very substantial blue chip companies. What have you really taken as lessons, I guess, from those companies and what innovation really means to you in the terms of marketing for those brands?
So if I think about moments when the kind of aha came in terms of innovation, I'd like to think of it in three ways. So I think the first thing is you really need to understand your brand and understand your consumer and understand your business model. And I can give you some examples. Years ago, I was responsible for Vaseline petroleum jelly. Okay. Now it's a ubiquitous product. It's in households all over the world. And when we think about what innovation means there, talking to consumers as diverse as marathon runners in America, new mums with babies in the UK, women in South Africa and India who are using petroleum jelly as a daily skincare, similar to a moisturizer. And really trying to understand how could we innovate this global product to add value to that very diverse consumer group. And this is where I think the innovation of your product offering comes in. And we did a lot of understanding, and what we found was actually the value we could add, because if you think about, why do we innovate? We innovate to create value, to draw customers to us, to create value for our businesses. The biggest innovation we could bring to them was actually going from a kind of easy on off cap to a flip top cap.
Right.
It sounds so basic, right? Why? Because if you're using this as a sports person, having a lid that falls off in your bag, if you're a rugby player, if you're a marathon runner, there's nothing more annoying apparently than petroleum jelly with bits of mud in, with your gym kit in. So for that consumer group, it was like, yes, amazing, right? If you're a new mum and you're trying to hold a baby in one hand, and if anyone's ever tried, for those of you who've got kids, right, trying to hold babies whilst doing things with your other hand, it's really hard. You put a flip top on a 750 kg pot of Vaseline, brilliant. You've now got a one-hand opening mechanism that allows you to use that product while holding a baby. And for the ladies we spoke to in South Africa, where actually there's a whole category, just that dial up of something that added a little special touch that was different to the competitive set added value. So there's a piece there on, if you really understand like what is that consumer need or desire that you're meeting in your physical product offering, I think that's really important. Second thing would be, how do you innovate in terms of the brand or in terms of the emotional benefit? And I spent some years working on Dove, and I think the case for this is well articulated. If you think in terms of what Dove brought when it conceptualized, real beauty, there were many people selling soap bars, cleansing bars. There were many people selling shampoo, etc. But being able to innovate on how that product was understood, the emotional benefit, again, I think hugely important in terms of how you can create significant value differentiation in that emotional space. And then coming on to the last 3 years at Kraft Heinz, I think never has there been a moment in time for marketeers where innovation in the ways that we do marketing and just listening to Julie talk about some of the ways that Draftline and ABI have done that, but also for Kraft Heinz, understanding the business model, right? So whether that's where's the margin pool and how do you rethink about your business model, your go-to-market. If I give you an example, during COVID, we launched Heinz to Home in the UK, which was a direct-to-consumer offering. Now, we turned that around in 3 weeks. And you may say, incredible. Well, direct-to-consumer is not rocket science. However, for CPGs, it's a space that traditionally not many CPGs with a B2C model have done very well. And it requires a very different approach and an understanding of where you can innovate in that value chain and that margin pool to do things differently. Could also be the way we think about creativity. So at the moment, how we innovate in our processes and how we innovate in how we get consumer insight, how we communicate, very, very different in perhaps how we've done it as Kraft Heinz before, but I think for the industry at large as well. So three ways in my mind, that product offering, that functionally, how can you innovate? How can you innovate your brand, your emotional benefit you're offering? And then business models, margin pool, where can you think about process efficiencies? All really to think about how you can add value.
A lot to unpack there, but I think the value of these conversations is that there's such insights that we can draw from that. And as a father of two children, yeah, I can totally empathise with that. And the difference is substantial, particularly when there are two. But equally, as someone who, as a father of two children, is trying to get back into running, again, the kind of product plays a really good role in both experiences in my life. So I totally understand that. What I love about the kind of information you've shared with us is you're not talking about anything that's necessarily new or cutting edge. What you're talking about is just really fantastic understanding of your audience and your business. Where they get to the next kind of set of questions where I'm looking at, I guess, how do we work out on more of a kind of above the line campaign type view? Where do you drive your innovation in terms of that? Is it all still rooted in your just really in-depth knowledge of kind of brand and audience? And is it driven by research, for example?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, again, I think innovation is relative, right? Because what may be innovative for one company, it may be a core capability in another company, it may be their way of operating. But if you think about innovation in terms of how can you do things differently, do things better to drive that value, we have something at Kraft Heinz called Acts, Not Ads. And so when you think about historically how CPGs have thought about communication above the line, very much let us tell you the message that we would like you to understand. And so when we think today about the plethora of platforms, the amount of time that consumers don't spend thinking about your ads, whatever category that may be for, the way we try to understand our consumers is what's relevant to them in their lives, in moments they have alone with friends, and then how can we bring consumer communications at the speed of culture to really cut through in a different way, to be relevant, to not be interrupting, but to be perhaps commenting on culture and perhaps bringing some experience in a big or a small way. A couple of examples that spring to mind. So again, I think with COVID really changing our understanding of what consumers want, what they're looking for. In the Netherlands, we have a leading brand called Honig. It's a meal solutions brand. And in the first 2 weeks of COVID, we understood not only that our consumers relied on us and were shopping disproportionately for our products given their shelf stable high quality, but we also know the challenges that the pandemic brought for many people in terms of access to food, even the affordability of food. So we actually convened in the Netherlands a group of people, some amazing celebrities, some amazing people, to basically have a live stream dinner table concert. Okay.
Amazing.
Now, our core competence is certainly not live streaming. It's certainly not putting on concerts. Why did we do it? Because for the brand, we felt that was appropriate given our role in society. And we did it to raise awareness and funds for one of our food bank partners that we wanted to not only support with physical product, but also to try and help them to raise awareness and raise more money. So from we don't know live streaming, that's not how we think about above the line, to we really want to do this. We believe it's of value to our consumers. It's our role to play as a brand. 10 days later, Live 8 was the concert, hugely successful and raised a lot of meals additional. On a lighter hearted note, similarly, during lockdown, I think many businesses were pivoting, right, trying to understand what could they bring that was perhaps different or more value. And there was a piece of social listening we did, which was around something called Splatoon. which Michael, probably given the industry you're in,
yes,
is very familiar to you. But at the time, I was like, I don't know what this is. Okay. And so what did we want to do? So there was an epic battle. Splatoon is a gaming competition, if you will. So you can have these epic battles on many different topics, but one of the most popular ones in the history of Splatoon was apparently ketchup versus mayo 3 years back. Okay. And so Splatoon decided during lockdown, again, the consumer behavior, a lot of people spending many hours playing a lot of games. Okay. Makes total sense, right? If you're not watching Netflix box sets or a series, then there's millions of people across the world gaming. And so we decided that we wanted to be part of that, be part of the excitement and the conversations that led up to Splatoon, and go and champion, obviously, Team Ketchup. I can't think of a better brand to lead that team as Heinz. But a very different way of perhaps traditionally how we've thought and how CPG companies think about communications and when and how to show up.
Yeah, that's a really good example. We actually have a video which I'm going to try and be brave and make Zoom play a video to 75 people. So bearing in mind I'm supposed to be an expert in live streaming with my background, this could be career defining for me. So I think the thing I love about that, and we can come on to the questions after this, but is in our conversation, it was a nimble exercise. And so the fact that you are constantly listening to all of this information, but there's a role for people bringing you opportunities and you having the degree of faith in them to understand that despite maybe it being a timeline that you wouldn't normally activate within, that the upside to your brand was so substantial that it was worth, I guess risk is the right word. It was worth taking a risk. But we'll come on to that. And for the love of God, I hope this video works. Can I get it? No. Are people seeing that?
Yeah.
Can you see that? You can see that, yeah? Okay. So I'm not sure if the sound played. Hopefully it did. If not, I feel like there's some kind of valuable things we can talk about on there. But first, how does an opportunity like that come to you? Is that via an agency? Is that internally just having an understanding of things that are going on in the market? I'd love some insight into what looks like a really nice campaign and how it was formed.
So when we think about insight and where ideas come from, absolutely, you know, we've got social listening, where we're constantly thinking about what our consumers are talking about, what are they searching for, and so there's sometimes the internal opportunity and sometimes our agency partners. You know, we work with amazing, fantastic agencies who understand our brands, understand us, and they feel comfortable in our relationship saying, hey, there's this great thing, should we do something? And so in this instance, one of our agency partners brought the idea, had actually seen this as a gamer himself and plays games with his son, Sean. He won't mind me mentioning him, I'm sure, and said, look, we're not sure if you're aware, but there's this amazing ketchup mayo battle coming. But by the way, they've just announced it and it's next week. We were like, okay. And sorry, it's called Splat what? Splatoon. Okay. And look, I'm not ashamed to say that, right? I have many interests, many hobbies. That's not one of them. But the reason I think you understand your brand, you understand your consumers, and then you bring valuable partners on is there may be ideas that perhaps you as a marketeer, as a brand leader, can't see. They're invisible to you. But understanding of your consumer, understanding of your brand, and then having your agency partners and having those trusting relationships is how you really get to really great ideas. And look, to your question on risk to reward, in some ways, someone's saying there's this great idea, it's in the gaming space, it's not a space that we've perhaps taken as much steps into as we should. I do understand that, you know, gaming is hugely relevant. I think the reach of all the different kinds of games is certainly huge.
Yes.
I think CPG perhaps as an industry is a little bit behind some other industries in how it understands the audience opportunity there. So with all that being said, I'm like, okay, this looks great. I think this is not without risk, right? Given we've never really done anything gaming, we're relying on our agency ecosystem, our media agency, our design agency, and then we actually brought on a fantastic agency who really understood the gaming space. And from the beginning of the relationship, we're talking about a week, right? Done virtually. Said, look, we want to do this. We believe it's the right thing for our brand. We're very clear on where we think our brand can be relevant and not overstep. And we trust you as our agency partners to help us ensure that that's how we manage very, very closely the activity. And you saw some of the results there in terms of engagement. You know, the fans were absolutely delighted, be those the players of Splatoon or ketchup lovers. And for us, it's that taking that innovative space, taking perhaps things that we're not comfortable completely with. We may not have done this before to understand exactly where it's going, but taking that step in a mindful way with the right partners and being very, very pleased with the results and how our consumers and how the gamers in that space reacted warmly to us.
Yeah, as someone spent a lot of times in games, I think the thing that we've always seen across my career of various companies, that the reach of gaming is only going one way, which is fantastic, and certainly lockdowns fueled that, and obviously we at Stream Elements being in that space are hugely, you know, benefiting from that. But the key defining success factor I see on that campaign with my background is that it was authentic activation. And what you've therefore done is you've come in and added value to an experience that already was crying out for an involvement of someone such as yourself, because like you said, it happened 3 years ago and it was hugely popular. You've come in and you've not sat there and tried to give too much information about the brand. You just complemented what was already a really valuable experience for players and viewers. And that is why I believe we've seen the kind of results that came up on screen for that campaign, which is great. you've obviously seen another campaign, which we talked about, which you don't have a video for, which is probably beneficial, as I apparently did not check the sound box, so I apologise for that. But the campaign that we wanted to kind of potentially talk about, very contemporary at the moment, is the Weetabix campaign that had obviously taken over pretty much every digital channel, every broadcast channel. You know, it was as big as a campaign as I've ever seen, and it felt very of that moment. Now, we discussed, you know, what does innovation mean around that campaign, and I'd love some insights for you, you know, on how that came to fruition, the kind of, you know, view that you have on that.
Yeah, Wheater beans, as we are fondly calling it internally, the breakfast of champions, right? I can't imagine there's anyone listening that isn't aware, but putting Heinz baked beans on your Weetabix as a breakfast opportunity is something that's been talked about a lot in the last couple of weeks. And in the spirit of, you know, how does that tie with innovation? A couple of things from Heinz's brand perspective. So Heinz in the UK, you know, a national treasure, hugely loved brand. In the context of communication, we have very strong paid communication. Actually, our editorial earned. So Good Morning appearances, Daily Mail headlines, Forbes, etc. We are now driving an incremental 50% of our reach from earned. Wow. Which is impressive. It's something we've been building over the last 3 years. But actually, for a company, you know, with such scale and doing some pretty innovative things with the brands generally, our appetite and our understanding of some of the social platforms, again, perhaps where we could improve. So no, Twitter is not a new platform, been around for a very long time, but for us, really making efforts and trying to understand how we can, you know, build those conversations and putting some more focus on it. So when the fantastic folks at Weetabix reached out and said, look, we have this campaign, we really believe that we could perhaps drive some conversation with a combination of, you know, two of the UK's most loved brands with Weetabix and Heinz baked beans. We said, okay, great, right? We absolutely saw this as perhaps a nice piece of social conversation. I think sometimes with these very big campaigns, of course, we would like to say, of course, we knew this was going to drive 400 million, make the morning breakfast shows, have people trying it and you know, set the world on fire. I don't think that anyone can ever say that they knew how things would take off and go viral before it happened. I think you can plan as much as one could possibly plan to have the right conditions. Mm-hmm. But I think you need, again, that understanding of, do your brands have the right to play and have a conversation in this space? And that kind of relevance in culture, right? So thinking about communication at the speed of culture, and the stars aligned. So I think Weetabix and Heinz as those brands that everyone can relate to, with a moment in time where, you know, we're looking at lockdown fatigue, a moment of light relief. And look, from what started as a simple conversation between two brands to have so many brands, so many celebrities, embassies of countries, GCHQ, National Rail, Stephen Fry, and for that to continue then into broadcast, into editorial, as well as some opportunities to raise money with some footballers taking up the challenge with looking to support the work we're doing on breakfast at the moment. That for me is a perfect example of really taking things which are common elements, right? The brands have been around for a very long time. Twitter's not a new platform. But what we were able to achieve with that, with both of our brands, moving at the speed of the conversation, driving the conversation on the spot, thinking about then 48 hours later how that showed up in Sainsbury's stores, for example, what that's led to in other opportunities, in my mind, is how we, we really think at Craft Times we have a value of we dare to do better every day. And I think that mindset, that mindset of daring today to do something that we couldn't do yesterday, or we didn't do yesterday, or we were perhaps too scared to do yesterday. That as the spirit that drives innovation and that drives innovative thinking and innovative things. Again, the payoff to the brands, not only I think the payoff to many people in the UK who I know for a fact, my one of my best friends, my mum, people are like, oh, it was just, I loved it. It was just what I needed. So, the moment of humor and light relief. And again, I would say to all of the brands and the institutions, right, that really engaged constructively in that conversation, who really all showed that same understanding of that cultural moment where we are with that lockdown kind of fatigue and mentality, instant. So I think that's a fantastic example of taking similar, very common elements, but thinking about them perhaps in a different way, moving quickly, and the results we're super happy in terms of the reach and also how we're seeing that adds brand power, actually, because when you can get an entire country engaged and talking to you and with you, for big national brands such as Heinz and Weetabix, that starts showing up immediately as some of the data's come back on not only your brand awareness, but also in this instance translating into some short-term sales as well. So really great value add there.
It's really interesting. We've come to the end of our kind of allotted time before we move to the Q&A. But I think in summary, the thing that I found interesting when we first chatted on the phone and just listening to you and just the fascinating examples you've given me is not once do you stray away for these three principles. And it's clear that they're kind of throughout your experiences at different businesses, but the understanding of not innovation as something new, but innovation as something to just take the existing pillars of how to engage consumers for brands and just speak to them in ways that are relevant. And again, the last example we had, the levity, absolutely right. It was something that, we all looked at. I'm not on Twitter, but I instantly saw that in so many different ways. And my wife and I never talk about anything to do with advertising. She's a lawyer, so she has no interest in what I do. But again, this concept of communality, we're all in this experience together, and this additive experience that was driven by the two brands was absolutely powerful. So look, we'll move. I've got two Q&As popping up right now. So the first is actually telling me that there's no sound, which I don't think counts as a question. That should technically be in chat. You've got me excited that we had two questions there, but apologies, Ruben. The second is regarding the Splatoon example. So the question from Eileen McIntosh is, for Splatoon, the client approval process must have been significantly accelerated / shortened. Was this a difficult thing to achieve? How was this managed internally? And do you envisage that this fast approval system will continue into the future to allow you to be more agile / reactive to capitalize on opportunities?
Yeah, thank you, Eileen. It's a great question. And look, again, I think that's really part of the spirit of how we operate in Craft Heinz, right? So we tend to be thinking in two dimensions: scale and agility. And so actually the speed we needed to move at with that campaign and the approvals process was actually very straightforward. It was WhatsApp. WhatsApp in terms of how we're thinking about getting the right assets, getting all the pieces we needed to get in place correct. And then you hear people talk about I don't know if I'm allowed to use the term war rooms, right? Command centers. Yep. And for this campaign, we had a command center. And, I'm like, what is a command center? Well, it's a room and there's big screens, everything's going on. Yeah. Okay. Maybe some companies you can have a whole room and all the screens. And don't get me wrong, for big theater pieces, if you were going to take on sponsorship of the Olympics, right? Or some of the big sports moments, yes, you probably do need a literal command center, but you can also get the right agency partners, the right team members that you trust, put them all on a WhatsApp, and in real time use that to approve things. So actually myself, Tiago in my team, and our agency partners, as that was going on, I can remember it went over a weekend, right? So I think it started on a Friday evening. It's on a global clock. It started on a Friday evening and ran for 48 hours. And throughout that time, there's social listening, there's an understanding of what's going on, things are coming in. I can remember there was one asset where it's like, look, we think this is a great asset. I'm like, oh, the chips look terrible, right? Great idea, terrible chips. Tiago, we've got a better picture of chips. 5 minutes later, what about this one? No, they're critical ones. They need to be straight ones. Change, go. So I think there's approvals and that speed and that agility. Tech can help with that. And certainly, there's never been more platforms and more software to do it. But it ultimately comes back to, if you understand your brands and you trust your partners, you can move at the speed of light. It also helps if something has a very hard and real deadline, right? So in that
Yes.
instance, what are you going to do? Spend a day on a post? The conversation moved 23 hours and 30 minutes ago. So you need to have that appetite and be willing and able to move. But then how you do that, I think there's so many flexible ways, and that's just a real example of how we did that. For some other campaigns, we don't necessarily have the command center, but perhaps more social listening, etc. It really depends on the scale and the speed and the amount of content that you're looking to produce and serve, depending on the brand and the circumstance. So I hope that answers the question, Eileen.
I think that's a very comprehensive answer, so thank you for sharing that. So if anyone else has any more questions, please send them through. Otherwise, I think there's a couple that I can ask based on the previous example that we've just had. I'll give it a few seconds to see if anything pops in. So in terms of the kind of experience, you've talked about the quick turnarounds. Do you think that was indicative of the new world that we found ourselves in? Was that a result of the pandemic and COVID, or would you have always seen that level of agility before, I guess, everything turned upside down?
Personally, I've seen that level of agility before. For some of the big global Dove campaigns, master brand campaigns that I used to run, actually, again, same principles, right? Very clear understanding of the brand, fantastic team, and we were very very nimble, moving assets, moving content, moving media spend. So do I think it's specific to the conditions we found ourselves in? No. I do think, though, as brands increasingly want to be relevant, the benefit of having a well-defined marketing plan, media plan, of course, I would still absolutely expect all of my teams and would suggest that being clear on your strategy and then being able to flex makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't want to manage, my brand portfolio and my year where everything is, we need this in half an hour. But I think being able to adjust that speed and adjust that understanding is a skill set that marketers increasingly will rely on. I think what COVID has done is really force all of us, across so many dimensions, to really be able to pivot, to really be able to, think about the fundamentals, but then with the risk and reward understanding, move pretty quickly. I think that's here to stay. But as part of a well thought through approach, and the change of gears is hopefully, as things start to perhaps become a little bit more stable, not quite so many pivots as we're understanding the world we're in now, how we should think about that speed piece and that agility piece.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, you've talked social listening, you've talked about the kind of experience of understanding what your consumer is experiencing. Does that also give you insight into maybe when to go quiet as a brand, to do the absolute inverse and pull back from your communications? For example, is that something that you have to take into account, are taking into account?
Absolutely, and I think before the social listening, that really comes down to brand strategy, right? So just because a conversation is topical does not mean it's appropriate for any brands to perhaps have a point of view. So I would suggest before you even get to the kind of social listening, understanding what conversations are happening, being very clear on the role you play in consumers' lives, your beliefs, your brand values, and therefore when and how it's appropriate to engage in certain conversations. And absolutely, Michael, in certain conversations, you have no right necessarily as a brand just to kind of step foot into everything. So yes, absolutely would be the answer. Sometimes it's best not to say anything.
So I see Lisa has joined us. Hello.
I have. Hello, we're at time. Thank you so much for that session. It was fantastic. I've written down some key themes that I think have come through. I was really interested in that idea of innovation rooted in real consumer insight, and the fact that innovation will be really different for different brands. I think the major theme that I took from the conversation was about moving fast, and I wondered, Victoria, how much of that speed is now built in to your system? I mean, forced by COVID potentially, but how much of it will remain for you?
Look, I think it will all remain. As I said, I think in the DNA of Kraft Heinz, this kind of dare to do better. So the spirit and the belief and the mentality, absolutely. In terms of the processes and the efficiency of how to do that, we're looking at digital transformation, and we're on a journey across many elements of the business there. But I think that mindset is the most important thing. We absolutely have that. That will continue, I have no doubt. And then finding the best ways to be able to enable that, across the business at scale is something we're absolutely working on. But I'm confident we're gonna get there for everyone to be able to do that across the organization as well.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was fantastic to see the campaigns that you're getting live in days. And I love the command center not required, because I think sometimes that can be quite daunting for brands when they're moving into a world where they need to activate incredibly quickly. But my favorite point from you today was the power of a hard deadline in getting these things live, that understanding that you've got to be in the moment in those conversations. And we've certainly seen that in the last couple of weeks. No one could escape your new breakfast invention. So huge congratulations on that front. And Michael, so nice to see you again.
Likewise.
Let's not leave it so long next time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael. It was a great conversation.
Pleasure. Thank you, Vicky. Bye.
Thank you both. We've got two really amazing sessions coming up, and actually Michael's given me a lovely connection with the last conversation as he talked about gaming. So I'd like to introduce Rob Buller to the stage. Rob is the Director of Global Brand Marketing at Electronic Arts. And I have the delight of introducing Laura Jordan-Bambach, who is the President and Chief Creative Officer of an agency I know incredibly well, Grey London. Welcome to the stage, Rob, and I'll hand over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Lisa. Absolutely lovely to be here and lovely to be talking all things innovation. Actually, I think we're going to flow on really, really nicely from the last session, and particularly what Victoria was talking about a little bit about kind of innovation as she sees it. So firstly, let me introduce Rob. So he's joining us from Stockholm today with a career which began throwing warehouse parties in London's East End and later developed through motor racing, music, broadband TV, advertising and video games. His focus has always been on entertainment, whether it was leading the digital transformation of Formula One's online offering or developing campaign work for Nike at AKQA. Rob has approached the work with the same foundational approach. In his own words, whilst the problems shift and evolve, my ethos remains the same: deliver the purest signal possible with savage channel pressure. I love that. That's a great way to introduce yourself. But I guess, Rob, we're both from the sort of old school birth of the internet kind of digital age, right? So that's kind of what both of our background are. When there really felt like there was innovation going on, I'd love to hear a little bit kind of about your journey before we get into talking about innovation.
Okay, yeah. Thanks so much, Laura. I'm excited to be here. It should be a fun chat. I mean, I hadn't even thought about that, but I do occasionally reminisce to that moment when I'd actually probably spend most of my time not really doing work and actually just finding things on the internet, which was just amazing. Just everything was a discovery. It's just like, wow, like, oh, look, something happening over here. And it was just, I felt like there was, it was almost like a big canvas for art once upon a time, the internet was. And I think that's largely what pulled me in, was that it was, like you just started to pull on a little thread. It's like, oh my gosh, I just found this mad thing over here. And then that would lead you. I remember there's some mad Japanese website that had a load of banners on it that were just amazing. And and I think that's where I first discovered pixel art. And I don't know, I could ramble about this for days. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's not the topic we're on, but it does fill me with this kind of like immense joy, just remembering that was the thing that definitely pulled me to the web and to, digital to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was the same for me. It felt like working in that digital space, you were much more like a creative pirate or an inventor than an advertiser. Certainly, it felt very, very far away from the rest of advertising. It's kind of interesting, I guess, then when we start to think about innovation and what it means. We actually, when we spoke earlier in the week, spent most of our time just talking about what innovation really is. So I don't know whether you want to, expand a little bit on like how you see innovation.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think that innovation is fantastic because we sort of need it, right? But I think that the problem is we kind of get in our own way a little bit with innovation. And largely down to the fact that it's kind of a big scary word for a lot of people when we say, right, team, go be innovative, go do some innovative shit. We're like, okay, cool. What does that mean? I'm stuck. And we find ourselves in this slightly awkward position where innovation is comes part and parcel and is bundled with kind of the Valley's description of innovation, big tech, and which, like some form of social innovation, which, ultimately will become just a colossal ad network disguised as a social innovation. And and I would love to just reframe it a little bit. I mean, we don't need a new word, but I'd like to reframe it to give people the space to actually think differently, to find innovative ways to do things rather than necessarily feeling like they need to develop something which is truly innovative from a Apple big tech perspective, and that is something I'm really passionate about trying to do. And so I suppose what I'm looking for is constantly ways to unlock the shackles, from the teams I work with, to try and give them the freedom to think innovatively without this pressure of big tech innovation.
Yeah, because I think there is that big pressure, isn't there? And again, certainly a lot of the things that we talk about as innovative or as innovation really aren't. And if you were to look at the digital side of our industry, it's a lot less innovative than it once was, even though the technology is a lot more advanced. We're kind of, without digressing, often the formats are the same, and often this is where, a company like EA is so exciting, right? And the opportunities to do different things. But in terms of what our industry and other industries seem to think innovation is, it is about something with technology at the core rather than applied creativity, I think, which is a real issue.
Yeah, fully. That you said that the other day, applied creativity. I love that. That's exactly it. Like, and I think that we have a responsibility to change this, and but it's kind of has to be at all levels within an organization that it can work in part bottom up, but it has to kind of work at top down. And I guess what I mean by that it's a bit of a mindset, and because it needs to influence talent acquisition. It needs to influence the way teams are built, the way they're staffed, the way I don't know. For instance, if we decide that we want to be more meaningful to our players, right? That's a thing that EA scratch their heads over all the time. It's like, well, how do we become more meaningful to our players? And often the thing that we don't do is to think, well, we employ councils, and so forth, people to come together to give us advice, come and sit and look at our things and tell us what you think of our things. And it's like, and it's cool, this is super great, it's mega helpful, but there's another way to look at it, and that's through taking an innovative approach to our talent acquisition and think, well, actually, what we need more people who look like the people who are playing, who are building the things. The creators should be the same, the one and the same with the audience, and we have the capacity to do that. So there's no reason not to. But it's a tricky one, right? Because it means, oh shit, new job titles, and I don't know where to put that person, and where's the reporting lines, and that gets confusing and awkward. But it's kind of necessary, I think, if we're going to truly break through that.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of bringing innovation the whole way through the business, not as a separate kind of unit or a thing to do or a kind of scary thing to try to employ or a budget or, however it kind of tends to be deployed pretty regularly, I guess, throughout marketing and throughout brands, right? But to be able to go, how do I make my business more innovative? And we spoke a lot about who is the innovation for anyway? And, is it for us or our own self-worth? Or is it for awards, or is it for an audience or a community or for the planet or what have you? And I think that's a really interesting starting point as well. Like, who are we innovating for?
Yeah, that's totally it. And that's, again, I think helps us get away from the kind of big tech hangover of it's got to be something that the Valley would like. Is if you start to ask the question, what are we trying to solve to begin with? What's the goal here? Then ultimately that's a better place to start than just innovation for innovation's sake. So 100. Like, who's it for? What's the goal?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I have been really impressed lately, actually, by one of the pieces that your old joint have made, AKQA for H&M. I think that is a really interesting brand, and a really interesting relationship in terms of doing something properly innovative. So I don't know whether you had a chance to look, but in their headquarters in Stockholm now, they've built this beautiful, I guess, machine where you can take your old clothes, like old sort of cotton clothes or old natural fabric clothes, put them into the machine, it shreds it, turns it into a thread and weaves you an H&M garment at the other end. So you can go in with 5 t-shirts and come out with an maybe you won't get a coat out of 5 t-shirts, but it's like doing something like that's real innovation, right? That's solving a really interesting problem in a really interesting way. Also, the entire process has no water. It's all kind of cleaned with ozone or what have you as well. So it's like super environmental. And that for me, it just blows away. But again, it's not what you would necessarily call or recognize as innovation the way it kind of sits within marketing and communications.
No. I love that I'm learning about that from you here on this live cast. When I live here in Stockholm, and I used to work for AKQA, so I should probably know about that. But I didn't know about that. But that's amazing. I mean, I love that kind of thing, and it's great because it's a cool story, right? That will travel and it says something. So therefore, the machine is epic, and like bravo to the crazy engineers who built it. But also, it's a great story which travels and says something about a commitment to a cause, which is kind of the big deal, particularly with things like that, when with corporate anxiety about being on purpose, and actually really meaning it, like showing up like that. So it's in what is it in every corner of your business, or is it just a line?
Exactly. How can you actually create innovation within your business? We were talking about sort of FMCGs, and there's a tendency again to Clubhouse is the thing at the moment, right? So everyone's like Clubhouse. which, as you said, will probably turn just into a massive ad platform, masquerading as a social media network at some point. But, rather than brands potentially going into these new platforms, is there a way, for example, should they be looking at their packaging, or should they be looking at, how to make their products more sustainable? Or, I love the we'll get to games in a sec, but, I love the ketchup Splatoon. It's genius, but, can we more entertaining? Can we be more playful, but not like, here's a new technology and I want to be on it.
Fully, yeah. There's another way to reach and resonate, right? Beyond the, I don't know, the traditional means. It's a good point about entertainment. There's a kind of there's a silliness in some of this stuff, which is something I'd probably like to see a bit. This is going wildly off track. Something I'd like to see a little bit more of is that, right? A bit of it's just we need to recognize what actually makes folks tick and what they're actually looking for from experience, what they're looking for from a brand. And if it's if we're not delivering something which is inherently entertaining, then we're probably starting from the wrong place, particularly if we work in entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that kind of is a great kind of segue into games and innovation in at EA and innovation in that sector. So what does innovation look like? Like what are some of the things we were talking about? Star Wars Battlefront, weren't we, this week? But it would be great to kind of explore ways in which the gaming industry is innovating.
Yeah, I think that I see it's kind of fits and bursts, right? That I see particularly in our company. I suppose if I look across the entire kind of landscape of gaming, we'll see someone charging ahead with something which is really interesting, a new way of addressing and playing with the player, because ultimately the relationship between the player and the brand is getting really closer and closer and closer and closer for us as video games companies. So finding ways to sorry, my daughter's pouring crisps in the background. It's proper loud. So sorry about that. So yeah, like they're getting closer and closer and closer. And so we need to find like interesting ways to develop those relationships in kind of meaningful ways. And for me, that's probably where our most innovative work lives. And so and so it's kind of multifaceted. In some ways, it is just pure kind of baseline boring tech, in the sense that it's massive kind of machine learning projects to understand insights about what our players are doing. So that really is kind of heavyweight engineering. And then I guess taking all these various different insights from various different platforms that we use in order to learn from, so that we can start to be more empathic to their needs. And so I think, so for instance, like one of the very kind of prevalent behaviors that you see in video games nowadays is just social play. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean necessarily connected multiplayer. Connected multiplayer being, people shooting each other in the face and like, whoa, I won. Like, not that, but actually a place to go and hang out and be together. And so, people clustering together as a group of human beings, playing a thing together, and then jumping into the next game, and then jumping into the next game, jumping into the next game. That type of behavior is pretty much the sort of the price of entry, actually, for a younger generation of gamers. Yeah. And so finding ways to not exploit that, but develop it with the players is something which we look at and talk about endlessly at EA. Like, how do you construct marketing for that? Because it's not, simple awareness doesn't really work, with that type of behavior, because you can tell people, okay, here, this thing exists. And even if it's free, it doesn't actually matter unless you've managed to convert enough people to get into the game in the first place. Yep. And then stay in there for long enough to see your friends show up. And then you're like, okay, cool. Now my buds are here. Now we can play. So it's interesting, this kind of gated process that we need to understand better to try and figure out how to, like I say, not exploit, but develop with the player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess there are platforms which you're exploring and that are out there, as well, where you're actually developing like the game and the audience for the game as you're developing the game, right? So if Steam, for example, where, you can be running a beta and people can be actually giving you feedback on what they'd like to see in the game and how they'd like it to work. And by the time you launch, you have this like ready and willing audience.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it's a tricky one really, because you have these kind of massive, we still talk in terms of AAA, meaning like a big shiny game that costs a lot of money, and indie games and everything in between. But there kind of isn't really an in between. It's becoming more and more that there's the big juggernauts, and then there's the smaller indie titles that are often people would say where all the art lives, and But what's interesting is sometimes the people, the developers who are in for the long haul, who decide that they are going to create a relationship with a relatively small cohort of players and then build it over time. And they build this kind of trust bond that becomes something which is very real and very sticky for those who are part of it, and can represent really, really meaningful business for people who have the appetite for that kind of long game. That's really amazing to see.
Yeah, I was reading, just jumping around a little bit, but thinking about stuff that's community led. The fact that The Sims, for example, which is one of your games, is open to creators, has allowed like so much richness in that game and on that platform, right? And I was just reading a paper this morning about the fact that there's now a big kind of Black gaming movement who's kind of sort of releasing mods to show what like the best of those communities look like, which is in turn having super positive change across the board.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really good. The work that the Sims team is doing is it's awesome. I love those guys. They're smashing it. Like it's exactly what I'm talking about. They're just approaching it all from a different, like their way that they market is fundamentally different to the way in which you market a normal video game. They spend so much more time with the community. That's a massive over-index for them, because it's like it's a real home for people, that game. It's a platform where they live, and they find themselves, and it's a deeply, deeply personal, which is it's pretty exceptional really for a digital product to have that resonance with its player base. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And that longevity as well, right? because it's not a new game by any means. Obviously it's it has many incarnations, but it's something people come back to almost like a virtual home from home over 5 years, 10, I don't know whether it's been around 10 years. It must have been just about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's exciting too, because it's whilst they behave in an innovative fashion, for sure, no question about it. It's rooted in what made the brand great, like many moons ago when it was SimCity. It was about building things, and just seeing what would happen. Right? Me too.
I think I lost something like 36 hours straight to that game when I was at uni.
I did too. It was like I was proper hooked, just doing weird shit. Like, what happens if I put a power station in the middle of the city? I don't know. Like, let's see. Like, that might be good. No, apparently not. It's not good. Everything goes wrong. But it's fun, and that kind of creator find, explore, experiment, that sort of spirit lives in that brand, and so it's definitely like a long play. So whilst the earlier games were created in a vacuum and then just shot out into the world, and they kind of hope people would dig them, it's definitely not the way the teams operate now. But it's more of a relationship with the player. But it's rooted in what made the brand special in the first place, which is clearly why they're such an enduring platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I know there've been quite a few forays of brands into The Sims and obviously other games, and I love the Splatoon example again. But do you maybe want to talk about a couple of those? I think we were saying that Gucci's been doing some amazing stuff on the platform.
Yeah, fully. Yeah, they're a really exciting brand. It's interesting because I'm not going to say who, but I definitely have some conversations with brands, and they're like, hell's yeah, they completely get it. They want a part of it, and they want to do great things. And it's not just they want to see their logos. They want to talk about the full brand experience. Like, how does our brand experience and your brand experience come together to create something radically unique for our players, for their customers and our players? It's like, yeah, cool. Now that's a conversation I want to have. And it scales from everything from, the folks like Gucci who completely get it and want to do like big deals and will put collections, they'll release, digital collections inside games, through to, the likes of, big music partnerships, like, in Fortnite, where you have people doing colossal gigs inside of a video game. It's mind blowing. Like, I can't really believe my son, a massive Travis Scott fan now, apparently, just because he plays Fortnite all the time. Like, and it's like, do you like any other, rapper? Like, no, just Travis Scott. That'll do. And because he found what was it? The Avengers too. He wasn't into superhero movies, but like he found the Avengers through Fortnite.
Yeah, well, I sat through their I can't remember what their collective experiences are called, but like the Travis Scott one and like the Avengers one. I sat through the Avengers one. It was so cool. It's really hard not to be swept away by the story because you're there with all these other Avengers.
Yeah.
Really, really
powerful stuff.
Yeah,
it really is. And it's funny because this is the thing, that we've been kind of talking about in gaming for a long time. It's the kind of thing that was clearly always going to be possible. It was always kind of around the corner. It was coming. But it's definitely sort of here now, where you have these massive communities who are all like massively engaged, all having a great time chatting to each other on their mics. And I think the other thing which is really important to learn about these people is that they're not gamers. They don't even self-identify as gamers, right? They're just people. They're just like, yeah, sure, I play games. But the platforms that exist allow for a connection to brands, which is fundamentally new, because you have different rules. The fantasy gives you a different place to begin with, and those that can take advantage of that opportunity are, setting themselves up to do magical stuff with a younger generation who get to fall in love with your brand for the first time,
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say also older generations, right? Because I think the biggest growing market, I think, is like women of a certain age. I mean, I know that's mostly mobile gaming, but rather than bigger platforms. But I think it's really interesting to almost take those blinkers off and go, okay, like what audiences are there out there that my brand can connect to, right? Because your
100.
The Toon audience, it'll be very different from your Sims audience, will be very different. We just did a piece of work for Pringles, working with an indie developer actually, called Raw Fury with West of Dead, where we took one of their
They're here in Stockholm as well, aren't they?
Yeah, so we took they are. Yeah. We took one of their non-playable characters out, one of the flesh-eating zombies, who jumped out during a live Twitch.
I saw that.
Oh, did you?
I saw that. It was amazing.
It was really fun, and we went and basically visited Twitchers all the way, which is the influencer platform for watching games. If you've never come across Twitch, it's a brilliant platform in and of itself. But that was just kind of understanding that the Pringles audience is a kind of specific audience that game is really going to appeal to, and whereas I think we've done some work with Animal Crossing for P&G as well around I guess around skin, and I won't say sort of skin conditions and sort of genetic, different ways that your skin can look, which has got a completely different audience again. And that was a crazy game during the beginning of lockdown.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, to your point earlier though about audiences, that's a fundamental truth. I think the thing that I think we have to continue to remind ourselves as well, it's not all Gen Z. There's also millennials, there's also X, and a couple of boomers, not too many, but a few. But it's a vast array of folks with very different needs who find themselves gaming. So yeah, there's lots of different ways and lots of different behaviors which all these various different like groups exhibit. Which if you particularly now, right, to your latter point about what's happening now. I mean, gosh, like gaming has never seen anything like it. I mean, it's pretty mad. I mean, I've been working for EA now for 8 years, and I've seen mean, it was big when I joined, but every year it just seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, but this year it's just been ridiculous. Or sorry, last year it's just been ridiculous because they're just at home, right, with not much else to do. So they're kind of forming these relationships with these universes and fantasies that are becoming much, much richer. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds in the coming years. But there's certainly been a lot of inside time, as we all know, over the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to kind of think about, people ducking downstairs to have a couple of games during lunch or something and coming back up, which is something that has just never been possible before. And it's where people have gone. I think there's because of the community aspect as well, there's, that kind of the relationship that you have with the game and the almost comfort that you get from playing a game that you know and love. That
100, yeah. I mean, it's mad because you even see it in games like Zwift, which is a thing that you connect your bike to this thing that connects to the back of your wheel, and then you connect it to your computer, and then you're cycling. It's a game, kind of, but it's controlled by your bike, right? And the subscriptions of that thing is just off the charts. It's blown up, and it's swelled from some people on this platform who are kind of exercising inside this video game to just hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Is just mind-blowing, like, to see that and this whole community spring up around it. New Reddit channels opening up and new subgroups and people clustering themselves and talking about particular routes that they do, and it's becoming like a real it's a kind of a mega thing now, which is very, very niche, and now it's kind of huge. It's interesting to see how these types of activities are blowing up. So what do they contract afterwards? What do we do as a game maker and game publisher to not lose the people in them? Because the thing is that about a lot of these games, they rely on the people being in them in order to be fun. If the people aren't there, then it's not a thing anymore. Like like I was saying to you the other day, like when my son was playing Fortnite and I kind of pulled him away from it, and he was super pissed and wouldn't talk to me for the rest of the day. And I realized it wasn't because the game was this kind of addictive thing, well, it kind of is, but like it was mostly about the fact that I yanked him out of the playground, and that was the thing. So the people together is the main hook. We just build the toys.
You saw my son wander in and grab his laptop so he can go and do Minecraft with his mates, and it's Minecraft time. Nice. But they more to hang out than to really kind of play, right? Look, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, so sorry, I'll let you finish what you're saying, Rob, and then I'll kind of open it up to questions.
Okay, cool. What was I saying? I don't think it's particularly important. No, I've lost it. If I remember, then I'll share.
Excellent. Okay, so look, there is a question here. Have any of your games grown significantly faster than the rest of your portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. Those which are the most social, because of people in lockdown wanting to connect with other people. That's something which they can't do right now. Globally. So 100, like the ability to find each other and some form of communicate, some place where you can be together. That's a huge driver right now, particularly in safe environments. So, like I said a minute ago, you have this big difference between play together versus shoot each other in the face for the wins. I'm not suggesting one's better or worse, but where one was dominating before, we've definitely seen a big surge in those which are more about play together. So 100. We see a lot of.
We were talking about esports, and I thought that was really interesting. Just the shifts that you've seen there as well.
Yeah, that's more of a perception shift that I think that we've witnessed in esports, which I think is really fascinating. In that once upon a time, the only types of esports that were, I say remotely successful, but I'll replace that with incredibly successful, are those where the fantasy was genuinely ridiculous. It's like crazy planet with people in mad suits and big boots and, you know, guns that shot pink lasers and, you know, all that stuff did really, really well. The things which were more like sport, motorsport, or, you know, basketball or whatever, those types of games struggled in an esports context because nobody wanted to take them seriously because of the fact that they existed in real life. So, you know, why would I watch, you know, this? I mean, they had an audience, but anyways, the legitimacy of those has definitely bounced quite heavily because of the lack of real sports. And so it'd be interesting to see if that's sustained, and if the companies who own those properties can keep that interest and that positioning change alive.
Yeah. What's your favorite? Are you still a gamer, or have you kind of, you know, has it kind of faded as time's gone on?
Depends who's asking, Laura. If it's someone in my company, I'm like, oh yeah, funny, I play a lot of games. No, the reality is I don't actually. I still do play video games, but the reality is my PlayStation now lives in my son's room because he's too loud for him to be in the lounge. It was a very practical decision to move it into his room. But living in a small apartment, there's only so much you can do. So no, it's screen time though. You know, I don't think it's necessarily a lack of interest. I think that this is something which we notice in a lot of people of my age, is that unless you have multiple room households, you know, then there is just, you know, it's often just one screen. And so what that means is that either as people grow older, they adapt and they move into mobile context, or they get a Switch, or or they just simply churn out and then they don't play it so much. But yeah, no, I definitely do still play games. I found this amazing game on Steam the other day, which is about driving trucks through muddy paths, and that's pretty much all you have to do. And I absolutely love it.
I mean, it is. You're right about where the creativity in you know. I mean, there's creativity obviously the whole way through gaming, but the Steam is just incredible. You know, or any of those platforms like Roblox. Not my cup of tea, obviously, but one of the biggest platforms in the world, because you can build your own little games.
Completely. Oh, actually, there was one I'll share, and this is going back, but it's worth sharing because it's really great. But although I've told people about this before, and a lot of people said, "Yeah, I tried that game." It's kind of like, "Yeah, it's all right." So I'm going to do it again, and hopefully, if you do pick it up, then if you don't like it, sorry. But there's a game called Unfinished Swans. Amazing. Like, it starts out with a white screen, and so no interface, no nothing, and this is true innovation, and this is. So circling back to the kind of the purpose of the talk, for me, this was innovation because it was it's artful innovation. And the fact that somebody thought, well, I actually don't really know what inspired it, and I'm not even going to guess, but it starts with a completely white screen, no instructions, nothing. And so you kind of sat there thinking, oh, is it broken? What's going on? And then you start to press some buttons on the controller and eventually try the shoulder buttons. And then as you hit the shoulder buttons, your character that you don't see hurls like a blob of ink at the screen, and which reveals a bit of shape. And then you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you throw another one, and then you throw another one. You realize it's not white. It's just there's no lighting, and the only way to reveal the world is by chucking this ink at it. And then you go on your merry adventure, and it's probably about 4 or 5 hours of entertainment. But I completely fell in love with that game because it was I'd never experienced anything like it before. It was truly unexpected. It had no real hype that I'd picked up, but it was really delightful. You know, it really satisfied that. I don't know. All games are shooters. All games are driving games. All games are this. You know, all games are sports. Like, it was outside of that. It was something different. It was just an expression of creativity, and for that, it was just super refreshing and fun. So. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I think one of my kind of favorite and most innovative games for a brand, actually, again, it's a few years old. I think it was done by AMV, but the Wrigley's game Nightjar. Don't know whether you came across that. It's a mobile game, but it's audio only. So you close your eyes and it's using binaural sound, and you actually guide your way through the game using the sound around your head.
That's epic.
So simple, right? But proper innovation in a way that, you know, some of the more technically complex things aren't because they're just following a trope.
Yeah, fully. That's the thing. Like, but that was delightful, right? That experience that you had with that, because it was like, oh, this is a new context. I haven't experienced this before. This is really, really cool. And so yeah, like occasionally, but this is the thing. The struggle though is, excuse me, much like movies and music, finding a publisher or finding an outlet that's going to take that kind of seriously to find an audience for you. That's a struggle, and so it has to be treated like art, and then hopefully that innovation gets picked up by someone else and you become a talent that people want. I think that's the path for those guys.
Well, I can see Lisa here, so I think our time is up.
It is, yeah. I'm afraid we have come to time. That was a very broad and sprawling conversation. It was not what I was expecting at all, in the best possible way. I love the fact that you started with this mental image of creative pirates. Can I please ask, next time you join Brand Innovators, we have suitably piratey headshots? I think that would be amazing. I also really, the idea of the digital playground resonates. I have a 9-year-old son at home, and he's definitely not happy when I'm turning his screen off in the evenings. So I think that idea of escaping lockdown is something that really came through. But I think the thing that was really interesting for me was just how human, given that electronic arts are a technology business, how human your view is of innovation. And I think something that was really powerful is the responsibility that comes from the insight that your community gives you, and the fact they welcome you into their homes and into their world, and they give you that huge level of insight and the idea of the trust bond. And I wondered how much that has changed through COVID, and that spike in the number of people engaging, or whether that's always been at the heart of your business and it's just something that you nurture every day.
I don't think it's changed. I think I can happily say that. Well, I think probably one of the reasons why I've stayed. I think EA is the longest I've ever stayed at any company, and I think it's because of there's good people here, and so whilst of course the sharks, they're everywhere. There's enough good people who are here for the right reasons, because they I don't know, they don't want to put the black hat on and go after the nickel and dime. They actually want to create experiences for people, and so yeah, that's an inspiring thing to be around. And there's enough of those folks in the company to remind us all to to not become sharks. So yeah, I haven't seen it up nor down. I think the one thing I have seen is just tremendous resilience from everyone. But I think we've all seen that. Like, it's hard. I mean, marketing's tricky at home, but on my days, like building a video game is a whole other thing. Those guys are absolute rock stars for doing what they're doing. I've no idea how they're pulling it off.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rob and Laura, again, for taking the time out to join us today. I think it was an incredibly valuable conversation, so thank you. We're coming on to our last session now, so I am going to introduce Ulf Tiedemann, the Head of Marketing Germany for Berlin Entertainment. This session will be moderated by Winfried Karst, the Managing Director of Europe for Talent, and I'd like to welcome both of them to the stage now, and I hand over to you, Winfried.
Hi. Hello. Hi, you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi. Hi, Ulf. Welcome.
Hi, Vinny. How are you? Hi, Lisa.
Not so bad. So you're in Berlin in the studio?
Well, it looks like, but these, great innovations of Zoom have the functionality to put me into Madame Tussauds, even though I'm in my home office at home in Berlin. But I haven't been in the attraction for a while due to, the current pandemic, as everyone knows. So different times.
Exactly. Yeah, very interesting. Good talking to you. I think it's really, your area of the business is really, I think, hit very hard by the pandemic on a global scale. And I see it also. I'm based in Frankfurt, so not so far from you, but it's kind of the same country. It's a lockdown, and yeah, you're kind of very limited in this area, and expect exactly. Yeah, marketing innovations is what we are talking about in the leisure sector. It's kind of a very interesting field. And is this even something, I don't know, to look at right now? Or are you busy with, let's say, only hoping that you're able to open up soon?
Yeah, I think a difficult year behind us, everyone. It's about a year now. We closed on the 15th of March last year, had a few openings in between, and now we keep all of our fingers crossed to be able to open again sometime during March, hopefully ready for Easter period, which for us in the leisure industry across the globe is, one of the key trading periods throughout the year. Easter, summer, fall, and a bit of Christmas. School holidays really important. Yeah, marketing innovations, those are kind of the ideal topics you look at when you have a little bit of space and a little bit of time, and don't start to just have fires burning everywhere that you have to look after. But I think what COVID has done a little bit is it's almost reset the situation slightly. And what it does, it makes you question everything that you do on a daily basis. Things that were normal before, now suddenly, you start to question whether are they actually right for me as a business, for our consumers, and just in general, are they the right things we do? And I think from a marketing point of view, we've seen last year, summertime, when we opened again, we opened under capacity restrictions, and that for us.
How restricted?
Sorry?
How restricted? 50%, 40%?
Well, it was based on the square meters. So technically, beforehand, we didn't really have capacity restrictions, and now we were restricted in terms of how many people per square meters we were allowed to have in our attractions. And that basically, when you wanted to trade and when you wanted to open your business, you needed to immediately look into new things of operating, and it completely changed our daily operation. Not even looking into marketing communication yet, because actually during last summer, we were lucky enough to actually have enough demand. So the demand was there, but we didn't have enough capacity to even fulfill that demand. So really, our marketing focus had been switched slightly. In Merlin, we are all marketeers really, and a lot of things fall into the marketing side of things. So yield management, for example, has been something that we've really looked at. How do we make slightly more money with less visitors? How can we survive with half the amount of visitors going through? Can we give less discounts, less online discounts? How are we able to potentially upsell some commercial products to our guests as well, and to kind of cover our costs in that way? Queue management.
And you also have to work on a certain exactly optimizing return on investment. So it's kind of less people, but still, I don't know, have to make money because you're not the only one working there. So start on the ground doing stuff, and
Exactly, and I think that in last year has really put us to the point where actually marketing communication was almost down to zero, because the demand was there. Why should I be going out spending my money on marketing activities if I don't have the capacity to let more people in? It's probably more similar to a theater or in the past when all seats are booked, you can't sell more tickets, and it was a little bit like that for us last year. So really a change in operation. We never had online time tickets, so you were able to book online tickets with us, and you'd have your ticket on your mobile phone. You just scan it when you come in, so paperless and seamless, which is nice. Is what people want these days.
Yeah, and it's needed.
Yeah, but we had to move to time tickets. So you select your 15-minute time slot online when you want to come to visit, because actually, we had to operate in a safe environment and needed to know when which guests are coming. But that also allowed us to optimize pricing and actually increase yield overall, because we know which were the times that people were most interested in coming.
Exactly.
So shifting your operational volume into shoulder periods, not daily shoulder periods, but on the day, people like to visit in the morning between 10 and 12. So you try to increase your ticket prices slightly there, but make it cheaper in the afternoon. Still the same product, same ticket basically, just a different time. And if people are willing to spend slightly more to come at a more convenient time, that's great. But also they have the option and fill our seats in the afternoon.
And it's also kind of, sorry?
Yeah, it has changed our whole kind of operation and then affected kind of all of our marketing channels and how we operate, yeah.
And is it still the same? I think in the past you had lots of, let's say, from an audience perspective, lots of international visitors, tourists that came to the various cities, trying to take a tour. I mean, it's the same. I'm coming from the out-of-home industry, which is in the way also affected on a mobility level. So people don't travel, they don't fly on vacation, they don't go on so many business trips, and they don't go to work. So lots of people are still in the home office. And I think it's the same effect on your side. You don't have so many Chinese people coming, I don't know, to going to see Legoland or going to see London Eye. So you have a completely change of audiences.
Yeah.
Which is, I think very interesting. And of course, you have to prepare all the internal systems and the use of data in order to challenge or meet the challenges of this problem.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the focus for us was really on the financial side of things in the beginning, really, because as we can see, so many businesses out there have already, gone bust, unfortunately, with not being able to open and accept customers. So really, really careful on that. And then yes, the change in behavior of travel behavior, and as you mentioned, like people working from home. I'm at home now. I don't go to the office as much because there's no one there, there's no guests there. I can do everything from home. But that also means I'm not traveling within the city center of Berlin. And if you were a company like us, and you are, a media agency, if I was going to you and say, I want to book some out-of-home activity, people are more in the surrounding areas where they live. They don't travel to work as much anymore. They don't use public transport. We used to have big campaigns in public transport and underground trains and in regional trains. Is that still going to be as important in the future? And luckily for us, our Berlin business isn't as dependent on international visitors as, for example, our London business. Or New York or LA, but even domestic travel, you don't see people from Munich rocking up in Berlin at the moment. Hotels aren't allowed to host you, so you don't have any overnights at all at the moment. So you really got to look into, as I said earlier, reset it. Forget everything that you know about your target audiences, because they won't be the same the next 2 years. Look at who are potential people, who's there, and then try to adapt your product and your marketing towards the people that you can address. I think that's the only chance for us to survive. But how do you see it from your clients and for out of home? Are they looking to advertise in different areas now, more spread, or?
Exactly. No, I mean, the good thing with what we have is the use of data. So we know where the people move around. We are also able with the, let's say, increase in digital out of home. So we are able to use daytimes or certain sites in certain areas. So where we know where the certain target groups and the audiences move around. So we know exactly how to address them at the right time, maybe with the right message. So we have a special unit that is able to, let's say, work on this dynamic, I call it dynamic creative content or smart content, smarter media more or less, to say, okay, I'm talking now in an area where you have, let's say, elderly people, more or less, you are able to upload ads at the right time, addressing the message to those people. And this is really interesting. We are also able to exactly do this on a more or less global scale. And yeah, it's one of our philosophies also to work smarter as standard. And coming back to the point you made before, coming from 2020 and now hopefully into a very nice 2021 is kind of what we always use also internally: reset, recover, and rise, let's say, for 2021. So really kind of coming back to normal. I think it will not be 100% as normal as, let's say, 2019. But I think it's kind of everybody had a reset point last year, and it's now really kind of, it's like also what you said, defining how to move and to restart again big, because it's in the out-of-home business, it's the same like hopefully in your business. Everybody wants to go back on the streets. Everybody wants to travel again. And this is kind of exactly what you have to be prepared now. And that's, I think, what you already have shown last year in summer when you were up again or open again. And so I think it's the right way.
I think that's exactly it, Winnie. I think so from our knowledge and from looking at the data from last year, the demand from people, and people want to go out, people want to travel, people want to experience things again, and I think we know that. And now with numbers declining, especially in Germany, and vaccines coming in, I think we're looking at a relatively good year ahead. Will that mean international travel is going to come back? I doubt it. And I don't think,
not so quickly.
Yeah. And I also think there's not going to be a time like before COVID anymore. It will always be the time after. And I think that's what we got to be careful about. Even with, if we didn't have capacity restrictions anymore in our attractions, in a Madame Tussauds, for example, would you want to go into an attraction that is full of people? Or has perception of people changed? And, will we go out and shake people's hands again? Or is that going to be, change? And I think we got to be careful when we start developing products, when we start developing marketing campaigns and communication, of how that kind of mindset has changed. But as you said, data is, again, we've been speaking about data, I think, for years, but it just proves right now that people that do have data will go further. And it's so important to kind of know that, looking at target audiences, really nail it down. For us, marketing resource has shrunken immediately. We have a few people on furlough, as probably many out there listening at the moment. And also marketing budgets. As I said earlier, if we are full anyways, I don't need to go out and do a lot of marketing, but there will be times again.
Yes.
So knowing exactly who you need to go after and who you can address. I mean, now going out and doing advertising for international people for the summertime in Berlin, it'll be a waste of money. So really be careful, I think, on who's your target audience. And look at data.
Did you also experience a change in target audiences last year when there was opening up, but was it a different travel behavior? Did you attract lots of new audiences all of a sudden, let's say new demographic areas of people that you, let's say, didn't have before?
Yeah, I think
something like this.
As I said before, I think we in Berlin are always quite lucky because we have a lot of domestic overnights here. So when you look at, again, taking London as an example, the London leisure industry is very much dependent on international travel, whereas the Berlin leisure industry is very much dependent on domestic travel. So we were really lucky last summer to not have changed our audiences that much. We've lost the internationals, but we were able to outweigh that with more domestic travels. I think all of the Germans wanting to travel internationally, they also couldn't. So you lost the internationals coming in, but you gained the domestics not going international. So we were lucky to get that. But what we have actually seen is to get a lot more residents as well. So 2-hour drive time, people from Berlin, Brandenburg, which is the surrounding areas for everybody listening internationally here. So about a 2-hour drive time is the people that actually we've seen an increase. So that just shows that the demand to do things is there, and to experience things with family, with friends, and to have something more special. Whereas maybe the year before you would go out every weekend and sit in the park. But we saw in the summertime people they were booking things, they were spending money, because the demand was there. Yeah.
Did it come by itself, or did you use certain, let's say, new innovative things to attract the people in the 2-hour drive time area in the circle? Did you use any new ideas, attract them by mobile mechanisms or whatever, I don't know, or different other things that you have never used before? Did you?
Maybe a little bit old-fashioned, but Winnie, probably great for you to hear. We did lots of out-of-home advertising, actually. So Berlin. And what we did was we went into, as we spoke earlier, we went into residential areas. So we didn't just flood the city center of Berlin with out-of-home advertising, but we went where people lived. So when you were walking from your door to your supermarket, you would see our advertising. And actually, I think it showed people that our attractions aren't just for tourists. They are also really fun when you live in the city. When you are from Berlin, some people have never been to Madame Tussauds, but actually they have a lot of fun when they come with their friends. And it's just, you have 2 hours out of your world. It's different, and you forget everything when you're there. And actually we were able to show that to people on their doorstep. We have a Legoland Discovery Center, an indoor playground in Berlin. We were advertising where families with children in the right age live, and we've seen that working for us. Whereas 2019 we were only advertising and heavily going after the domestic tourism market. So our advertising was big and bold, but just in the city center around our attractions. So that was a complete change in how we did advertising, and it worked. It worked for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, because all those people, that's what I meant with changing audiences. It's different audiences, not just the people who are living or who are staying in the city center. So it's different people coming, because all of a sudden they think about it again. It's kind of that's why in a way you can say the COVID pandemic is not so bad, because it drives people to think new ways, think new directions, and that's perfect.
I think the challenge that a lot of people and a lot of people I'm speaking to from other within the leisure industry here in Berlin or across Germany, I think at the moment is time and budget and people. I think that's currently, for everybody, and I think that shows us that it's such a reset and a restart, and we have to think about those things differently. And I think that's where automation comes in, and really helps. And that shows now, I think, that people or companies that have invested in future technology and in future marketing channels in the past are now ahead of the game.
It's an advantage.
Sorry?
It's an advantage for those guys.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's where now some of the businesses struggle, because they now have to really play the catch-up game. And that's where they lose money every day, I think. But automation, for example, is so important. Having your right tools in place, having your right people in place, and really using with no budget, doing marketing with no budget. Merlin, I think overall, we are always relatively careful with our budgets, I'd say. I'm quite sensitive. But I think that really plays in our favor right now, because doing marketing with no budget, it works for us.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, because the issue is also the issue is also, how can you, let's say, you have to work more effectively. People are, what you also said, people are on furlough. So it's like what we did. We invested also some years ago, or we started investing some years ago in systems, in automation, in process improvements and so on. And I think it's now kind of people are, or staff is on furloughs. So you really have to make use, or we have to make good use, or you're forced to make real use of the systems in order to be able to take care of your workload that's coming in. And I think that's a very interesting thing based on digitization, which is also kind of a word I don't really like to use anymore, but I think it's very important to drive things forward. And not only in Germany, I think your colleagues in London probably sitting in the same boat as we are. So how do you deal with this? Also, you're happy with the systems you're having, so you're able to work very efficiently and very effectively.
I think one really good example, it sounds quite simple, but in a company like Merlin, we have more than 120, 130 attractions worldwide across the globe, over 20 countries. When you start using a system from a company perspective, and a lot of you will probably know that, you start checking, does it work in every country? You don't want one solution for one attraction or for one market. You want it across your company. And I think that's sometimes what holds people back. That's, I think, sometimes where small startups or small businesses are sometimes further advanced when it comes to digitalization. And for bigger companies, going through those steps, actually checking, does it work? Is the program available in Chinese and Japanese? Does that work? But actually, one of the most important things for us that really helped us now was just our booking system. So we had rolled out a global booking system across all of our attractions, fully end-to-end, from a web to POS, consumer phones. It just worked smoothly. And we were lucky enough to have that in place before the pandemic, because it allowed us quickly in hours to switch from dated tickets to undated tickets to gift vouchers to time slotted tickets to all of that, and all that worked with no contact as well in the attraction. You get your QR code on your phone and you scan it. The scan works through a glass. You can scan through glass. You don't have any contact points with customers, and also customers don't have to queue at the attraction because people don't want to stand close to other people. So sounds really simple, but I think sometimes that's where again, I think back to basics sometimes it is, and get those basic things right, because I think that's really, really important at the moment. So I think that's an example where I think we were really, really lucky and happy that, having those systems in place to do that. And ticketing in our industry is one of the most important things, because no tickets, no visitor.
No return on investment. No return on investment. So you seem to be very well prepared now for the reopening.
Fingers crossed we are, yes. Yeah. We can't wait, obviously. In Germany, there will be a new, the lockdown is currently until the 7th of March. And then we're looking to potentially reopen after that. And we are in a good condition. I think because we already were open last summer while the pandemic was happening. We know basically everything, what we need to do. Will be interesting to see if there's capacity restrictions for us again. But if there are, I think we are ready to go, and we are ready to open the doors and welcome visitors again. You mentioned return on investment earlier. I think that's important for us. And while demand is there, we are also looking to invest in our products, make them better, put some new product in the market. To gain that additional volume in, and then hopefully later the year in 2021, things will start to be a little bit more like 2019 again. Capacity restrictions lifted, which will hopefully help the overall industry. But the most important thing for us to happen that is that hotels will be able to have guests again and to host people, because without that, it will be really, really hard for us.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really interesting because it's the same thing what we are also, let's say, getting prepared, trying to do more on automation. How can we really develop a much more deeper understanding? We already always work on a deep understanding, but the interesting thing is really, what does your customers want? So we have different customers, so let's say want to advertise and drive messages like you guys or like you.
Yeah.
And you really also have to see, okay, how can you attract your customers? So we're sitting in the same boat, and I think we are kind of in a parallel universe, Merlin, and we are telling to really drive things forward and to make our clients happy and smarter and innovative technologies. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Thank you so much for that session. That was so interesting. I really liked the comment that you made early on in the session around really using COVID as that reset. I think taking everything from a base of, the old rules do not apply anymore, and really thinking about, is this the right thing to do? Is it right for the business? Is it right for the customers? I really loved the idea that you've changed your planning completely to deal with the fact that you don't have people who are visiting an area necessarily, but targeting people who live in that area. And I had a question for you on that of how much do you think that will remain? Because that feels like a huge growth opportunity if you get that balance once international tourism returns. If you can attract both audiences, then that must be a huge opportunity for you.
To a degree it is, but looking at our attractions, you might visit them once a year, whereas if you are targeting tourists, they're new tourists every 2 days. So your audience is much bigger when it comes to your tourists in the city. But we do have products that are definitely more targeted towards locals. So looking at our Legoland Discovery Center, which is an indoor playground for kids, perfect product for an annual pass. The whole winter time. What do you do with your kids when you pick them up from school? It's raining outdoors. You gotta take them somewhere. Get an annual pass, and you visit 4, 5, 6 times a year, or even more often. So really looking at that. But hopefully, when travel is less restricted again, your audience overall is much bigger in that sector. But until then, let's hope the locals keep coming to our attractions.
Really focusing on locals. As an annual pass holder, when you said you only visit once a year, I was thinking that's not the case in my house.
No.
My loves to go after school to our Legoland. Windsor is his favourite thing to do. So we go much more than once a year in normal time.
Yes. Very
Thank
good.
you so much for your time today. All that's left is for me to thank all of our speakers. So thank you again to Julie, Dries, Rick, Victoria, Michael, Rob, Laura, Ulf and Winfried. They've given us lots of food for thought. It has been a fantastic day focusing on marketing innovation, and I'm excited to announce that our upcoming international livecast will be happening monthly in 2021. So my final thank you is to all of you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in March.